Good morning, everybody. I am going to call this RPC meeting to order Friday, May 22nd, 2020. And I'll have Pam call the roll.
Thank you. Joan Dykstra.
Here.
Diane Marlin.
Here.
Katina Wiltshire.
I'm here.
Anna, okay, thank you. Anna Olguin. Charles Smith.
Here.
Tammy Fuling Bogus.
Here.
Stephen Summers.
Present.
Geraldo Rosales.
Here.
Jim Goss.
Here.
Dennis Roberts.
Here.
Deb Frank Finan.
Here.
Patrick Brown.
Here.
Will Kiles. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Pam. First, we have approval of the agenda and addendum. We need a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Rosales, second.
Any discussion, any corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have audience participation. And in the first part, we have a participation from Michael Mallett from Baker, Tilly, Virchow, and Kraus LLP concerning the fiscal year 2018 single audit update. Michael?
Yes, good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Great. Well, thank you for having me this morning. I'm here to give you kind of an update on the obviously severely delinquent 2018 audit for the county, which includes the federal single audit, which is the work we do around the programs that RPC administers. Just giving you a current status update on expected timing of issuance. We're looking for a mid-June, late June issuance of the 2018 audit. This is probably the first date that's been given that I feel even remotely confident about, if I'm being direct, due to the fact that we've actually seen significant progress on the information provided to us by the county auditor's office and other departments to help us get across the finish line to where we need to go. Just to give you some information, I know RPC management has shared with you some of the information that we've discussed in the past and as to reasons for delay, but just to provide some context. I know at one point we were told that the audit would be issued by calendar 2019 year end, which was really not a feasible solution due to the fact that the Treasurer's Office had not completed all the 2018 bank reconciliations, which meaning that we couldn't even assess whether cash was correct as of the year end. So that was one of our big original delays, not receiving December 2018 bank reconciliations until January 2020. There were also some issues with receiving information from various departments, but primarily the auditor's office, which was mostly due to one individual, a former employee of the county, who, for reasons I have not understood, completely was never provided within the timeframes we required or that were originally guaranteed to ensure the audit was issued in a reasonable time frame. And this is not just the 2018 audit, as you guys are aware. This is going back really since before we even started as the auditors of the county. It just got progressively worse over the past 2 years in particular. What is unfortunate for RBC is that of all the work we do related to federal audit programs happens, the first thing we do, really. We did the work around the 2018 single audit in March 2019, substantially completed all the work we needed to do around what RPC provides us and is responsible for. Unfortunately, due to the auditing standards and the requirements of federal government, we're not allowed to issue that report until the financial audit is completed. That's due to the fact that some of the numbers that we give an opinion on are required to be tied directly to the financial statements. So without a financial statement that we give an opinion on to tie back to, we can't issue it. That first domino needs to fall before the second domino of the federal single audit being issued can be done. Additionally, all the filings with both the state and federal agencies require the audit to be submitted along with the federal single audit. and that is, I know, the greatest frustration more than anything else, I think, from management, is that there's nothing that you guys were able to do to speed this up, as it was out of your control and puts you in a really difficult situation, reporting to various state and federal agencies on matters that you can't control, due to the fact that the county, other offices are responsible for the issuance of the financial audit. Where I am confident that we are finally making progress and we'll see issuance, and I'm hoping within the next month, is the fact that they've hired some new personnel within the auditor's office, and we've seen more progress in the past 2 weeks since that individual started than we saw in the last 6 months. So that is, I don't want to be too confident given how things have gone. However, it's been a massive turnaround very quickly, which is great, also very frustrating. But with that said, the personnel working there is working through information, providing us what we need and giving it to us so we can then complete our procedures. There is some timing. Unfortunately, we can't just immediately turn around after we get it and say we're done. We have to evaluate, analyze, test all the work, and then review the reports and everything like that. And we have a lot of quality control work internally we do to get them out the door, which is why it's going to take a few weeks for us to even get to the point of issuance. But now that we're getting information, we're able to kind of take our team and really focus on getting things done. Now that we're actually seeing physical information provided to us. So, I know that puts RPC in a tough situation with all of this because, in the past, a lateness of an audit may not have been the greatest risk in the world. However, oversight over federal funding in particular, and really even state funding is greatly increased over the past several years. The Grant Accountability and Transparency Act, GATA as we call it, went into effect last year. It basically requires the county to report all state and federal spending to the state within 9 months of the fiscal year end. They're on it. They don't just say here's a deadline and then ignore it. They're very adamant about these deadlines being met, and they're providing, and it presents a risk because they're evaluating all the entities of the state. And while there's a lot of funding that is not competitive in nature necessarily, but I know RPC does have a lot of competitive funding, and I do worry that if this is not resolved in the very near future in terms of the timing of the audit, that there could be some long-term repercussions due to grant funding. Additionally, the federal government, for their oversight in the current administration, they're providing less money to state and local governments. By nature, that makes everything more competitive. There's the same amount of communities looking for money, but there's less money to go around. We have an election in November. That may change, it may not. But that has changed the environment in the last 4 years, so where money was a little more free-flowing from the federal government, it is not so much now as it used to be. And we just don't know if that's going to change or not. So the landscape has changed, I think, greatly, particularly in the last 2 to 3 years as to that. And it is really, really important for the county as a whole. Our RPC is doing their part. Now it's the county as a whole to ensure that these deadlines are met, and good communication exists with the state and federal agencies that are in need of this information, to ensure that to protect the money coming into RPC. I do know the plan. Once we get through this 2018 audit, I think of it as a 2 audit plan to get back to a traditional time frame. Obviously, the 2019 audit, we in theory will be getting close to wrapping up right now in a normal world. Our goal at this point is to finish the 2019 audit by the end of calendar year 2020. The good thing that comes out of that is the federal government and the state have automatically granted 6-month extensions due to COVID. Kind of the silver lining, I guess, if you will, of all this is that the September 30th deadline date has been extended to March 31st, 2021. So it gives the county some leeway to get back on track and caught up without being delinquent in filing and reporting to the various state and federal agencies. So if we're able to achieve that with the 2019 audit, which I am hopeful we'll do so with, as long as some of the other issues of some of the other offices, such as the treasurer's office and doing some of the things they need to do in their current situation, bringing some new people in, getting up to speed, we should be able to issue a 2019 audit by the end of 2020. And then the 2020 audit, which will hopefully be in a post-pandemic world and not have to worry about other extensions and things like that, we'll be able to issue the financial audit within 6 months and really which is what our expectation always has been and is with all of our other county clients is to issue within 6 months and complete that along with the federal single audit filings, the GATA filings, everything that is required to submit to the various state and federal agencies. So, you know, it's not a pretty picture. It has not been for a while. It is, I know it's been a great frustration for RPC. I know on our end, we're doing the best we can to push the various other parties of the county to provide us what we need. We keep on them, but we can only work with what we have. We can't do an audit without information being given to us. So we have been at the mercy of what was provided to us. Now that we are getting information, we're able to actually do our part to see this to completion, which is encouraging. So that's kind of the status of things. I know management thought it was a good idea for me to come on and say a few words and kind of fill you in and let you know how things are going. And hopefully by next month, you know, or by the end of next month, we will be finally through this 2018 audit and be able to get things back on track for the county as a whole and protect the funding that RPC is receiving.
Thank you, Michael. Does anybody have a question or comment for Michael? Just raise your hand if you do and speak up. Go ahead, Deb.
So I have several questions. I think first I'm wondering, is it possible to get a list of what it is that you are still missing so that we can also try to encourage people to get that to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it just information from the auditor's office, or is there information missing from other county departments at this point?
At this stage, it is the auditor's office, but that's primarily because we're funneling our requests through them. A lot of the information probably does come from other departments. I don't put blame on the other departments. I think we communicate through the auditor's office because their purview is the financial audit. We send our requests to them, and they're then going to other departments and offices for information if they don't have the answers or the information we need. As of now, I know a lot of the work that we have remaining does require them to reach out to other offices to make sure they're providing us accurate information, particularly as some of the people working with us now weren't around in 2018 to even know what was happening. So that's going to be one of the challenges as we're wrapping up, and they're working through it. And I know that has been the sole focus of one individual in particular, who the auditor's office just hired to come in, and he's been productive, at least in providing us information. So it really is on the auditor's office at this point. I'd say earlier it wasn't that, while it was primarily the auditor's office, obviously with the audit being their responsibility, you know, being a cause of delay, there were other circumstances, other offices, other departments that had their own troubles that exacerbated everything, I think is the best way to put it.
So is this a situation where additional help or temporary help could provide the information more quickly and that you could get things done sooner? Like, where are we in the stage of trying to get this accomplished more quickly?
I think at this stage, it's too late for additional help to come in and provide anything quicker and to expedite the issuance date at this point. They have provided a lot of information. There's still a handful of things we need to get. Now it's really going to be in the next, probably once we get through the Memorial Day weekend. I know they're going to provide us some more information today. It'll be on our team to start working through that information and completing our procedures around that. I think for the 2019 audit, you know, that might be a consideration if there is a need. I do know in prior years that was identified as a concern or reason. I don't know the validity of that because it always came up after the fact. But I think with new people involved in the audit this go around, it's certainly worth a consideration and something we'll recommend to them to say if they need help. We have offered in the past even external third-party services. Doesn't even need to be us. Any type of third party that could help if they can't don't have personnel who can support them, or if it's not financially practical to hire another person, might be more practical to outsource some of that work just to get them caught up. We've talked about that before. It has never come to pass, but it's certainly worth something if there are struggles to continue to provide information going forward with the 2019 audit.
So I want to make sure I understand. You're still missing information for the 2018 audit.
Sure.
Assuming that you receive the bulk of that information, your team then has to do its work. What what
Correct.
stage are you guys actually at?
So our stage is everything we've received up to really this week. We've done all our procedures around that, and they're either completed or we have follow-up questions that are part of our our punch list of items that we need to wrap up on. Some of the areas that we have remaining, for example, there was a lot of stuff related to the nursing home that we needed information on to evaluate the balances they were providing, that we only just received this week. I think of the requests we sent out, I want to say the beginning of April, and a lot's happened at the auditor's office since the beginning of April. But since the beginning of April, the request had about 18 items on there, and not just 18 little items. They're basically areas, sometimes with multiple questions, sometimes with needing to provide information for 25 different things, but all related, thematically related. Of those 18 items, I think we have 15 or 16 of them now. So and this all come in the last real week. So we have most of what we need at this point. There are still a few things that I know are in progress. Those are generally things that they're working with other offices, or with like the nursing home, for example, trying to find alternative ways to provide us what we need to complete our procedures because of the nursing home not, in 2018, that information is a lot harder to obtain. So those are kind of the things that are lingering and they're working through. Our expectation is to have all of that by next week. So now that we've received most of the stuff, I do have staff working on it. It started working on it this week and will continue next week to work through. And we have all sorts of things that are prescribed by our guidance and standards that we need to do around that. Some of them will be done as soon as we see the information and we'll be able to kind of cross it off the list. Others will need to evaluate and likely ask follow-up questions. Hopefully not substantial, and hopefully those will not require a significant amount of time to follow up on, as the big step is getting us that first batch. But it might be, for example, might be giving us some information and we say, oh, we need to see some invoices as a result of this explanation, that kind of stuff. So there is some dialogue remaining. It's not simply giving us, look at it, call it a day. It's giving it to us. We're going to look at it. We're going to formulate any potential further questions and potentially have them provide further information to validate their explanations and responses for balances. So
my request would be that if it's not completed by our next meeting, that we have another update so that we know where we're at status-wise. And it would also be really helpful if there is a delay. Once I understand that you now need time to go through the information you've received, but I assume then you're going to ask questions back to them. If there is a delay in getting responses to those questions, we need to know about it, because this group of people has the ability to, request that the county hire additional staff or, whatever needs to happen. We have county board members who are sitting on this group, so they're now aware of what's going on.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And when is the next meeting, just so I can have it on the calendar?
Pam?
It's the fourth Friday in June. I don't have my calendar in front of me.
That's perfect. By that
26.
point, I'm hoping we're done. 26th? Okay.
All right, other questions by members? Delitso, do you, in terms of what this means for RPC, do you have any comments before we move on?
Actually, I would defer to Betty, since she's the financial person.
All right, Betty.
Sure. Good morning. Thank you. One of the areas that is very concerning, still concerning, is, as I mentioned at the board meeting last month, we had a review from the Illinois Department of Human Services, a comprehensive fiscal and administrative review. A response and a corrective action plan is due 30 days calendar days from the date of their letter, which was April 23rd. That response needs to include a written corrective action plan, a designation of a timeline for that corrective action plan, and the person or persons that will be responsible for responding to all of the findings identified in that letter. And those findings were significant, related to the auditor and the treasurer's office. And to date, we've sent this to both offices, and to date, we've not had a response. I'm concerned that given the money that this Department of Human Services provide for emergency shelter funding for client services that our funding, our disabilities funding and other funding is in jeopardy. They can and may immediately stop payment, which would be obviously devastating to the RPC. We also have an outstanding Department of Commerce has asked why the audit has not been uploaded in the data portal. My understanding is that at some point, based on the email we got last evening from George, that he plans to call someone. We still need to respond to USHHS. Again, my concern is that unless we have something written to show that we're exercising, or these offices are exercising their due diligence in order to meet and define the corrective action plan and timeline, we're in a very weak position because we can't respond to those. Those offices are, they have a statutory requirement to handle the funds. The RPC has no ability to respond to those. So those are my continuing issues. The fact that IDOT, the fact that Department of Commerce, the fact that Department of Human Services, the fact that USHHS, they're all asking the same question is going to start being indicative of some major systemic issues and raise a lot of questions with regard to our ability to appropriately manage federal and state funds. And with that comes a huge risk to the RPC and could potentially jeopardize our funding going forward. We are right now highly engaged. All the staff is engaged in responding to a number of grant initiatives, new initiatives, some related to the CARES Act, some not. You know, we are fully funded by the federal and state grants that we secure. So we want to be in the best competitive situation that we can be, you know, and having an appropriate fiscal structure is key to them having confidence in funding us.
Other comments or questions? I guess I'm frustrated still. I know I'm looking at Mr. Goss shaking his head. Is there anything that we can do, or do we just need to stay out of the way and it is progressing? Michael and Jim Goss and also Geraldo.
I personally think if you can put as much, just pester is the best thing you can do at this point, because as you know, it is their statutory requirement to do this. It's unfortunately out of your hands to physically actually do something right at this point. Putting as much pressure on the various offices, I would say the auditor's office and treasurer's office to meet their requirements, their mandates, and achieve that is, I think you should continue to do that. I would not stay out of the way. I think that's probably the worst thing to do. The less heat they feel, the less, historically, I feel the less heat they felt, the less likely they are to respond. And that's not necessarily unique to them. It's unique to any of our clients that have had troubles with getting us the information and getting an audit out on time. So I think continue to put pressure where you can to push the needle and force them to do what they're doing. I think the auditor is finally doing their part. I don't know about the treasurer's office. I've heard that there's actions being taken to help them get caught up in the various issues they've had over the past year. And that is my big concern, honestly, going forward, is the treasurer's office more than the auditor's office. You know, that will be a massive holdup to 2019 audit and going forward if they're not able to kind of get their house in order. So continue to put pressure on both those offices, I think, is crucial to ensuring that this gets fixed. And 18 is
just one quick comment to support what Betty said. I think what's been frustrating, particularly for our team, is that it's taken several communications to get a response. And you know, the fact that we had to reach out to you as the governing body for the RPC to intervene or to reach out to those offices on our behalf, I don't think that should be the way we should function moving forward. I think that if there are challenges, you know, all we're asking for is provide us an explanation, you know, so that we can communicate appropriately. But when there is no response, it puts us even in a much more difficult position because our funding sources then feel as if we're simply ignoring them. And that, I think, would even put us in a worse off situation as opposed to saying, well, either the audit is late or whatever explanation would be appropriate. So I would hope that moving forward, we will be, at least with those two offices, working in a more collaborative fashion so that information is flowing, particularly because we're the only, I think, entity within the county's infrastructure that is 90% funded by federal and state grants. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
I'm going to ask County Board. Oh, Tammy, Mayor, you're muted.
I'm sorry. The one thing I would like to have on record also is, just like what Delitza said, is that, we're having trouble having the treasurer's office or the auditor's office even respond to us. And that has been going on for quite some time. And the other issue that I have, and I would most certainly like to be sure that it's also recorded in our conversation today, is, back, I was reviewing some of the old minutes, and back in our December meeting, the auditor came to our meeting in November, and I'm not going to say flat out lied, but it certainly looks that way, because he told us that everything for the 2018 audit was ready to go, and his intentions was to have it uploaded on December the 13th. And as we all know, that did not happen, and I have a huge problem with him sitting there telling us that everything was, ready to go, and all it had to do is finish up a few things to have it uploaded on December 13th. And obviously, from what we know now, that was the furthest thing from the truth, because it wasn't even close to being done, because it's not done now. So I guess, my trouble is we not only don't get a response from them, but even sometimes when we get a response, it's not accurate. So I guess that's also where I'm very frustrated, is lack of information, and the information that we get is sometimes not accurate at all. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Diane,
I
Mayor.
have a couple questions. One is, I haven't watched county board meetings recently, but I wanted to know if this has been actually on an agenda item, and if there was ever a real discussion recently about the impact on all of these programs that we're looking at. And secondly, I would add to the concern, I'm now reading that the treasurer's office, of course, is an elected position, and there's a movement afoot to run somebody against the current treasurer. So that's going to throw things into even more turmoil going forward. So I guess I'm asking, does the county board fully appreciate the impact?
I'm going to let Geraldo go first, and then Jim, and then Steve. Geraldo, do you have any comments?
Yes, we have been in discussion with the county board regarding RPC's request for the 2018 December and November audits. But it's been a turmoil. I'm not going to go ahead and cast the blame on any one office or on any one individual, but we have had a turnover in the treasurer's office, and we had 2 new individuals that jumped in, feet first, and began to put things together. There has been a lot of chaos in filing and in recording and trying to reconciliate the accounts. And that's what these 2 young ladies have been trying to do since they got there, and they've only been there about a month and a half. But this is 2018, which goes way back prior even to Laura Pressing. So reconciliating that, I said, well, work from 2020 going backwards. So that's what they're doing. They needed to get the bills out to everybody, and now is a matter of collection. We and the finance committee approved additional monies to hire an additional staff member in the treasurer's office, because they are basically overworked and overloaded. Regarding the auditor's office, they hired a new deputy auditor. They basically dismissed the auditor deputy that was there for almost 8 years that had been keeping track of a lot of these accounts, and she is no longer there. So now they have a new individual. So because of the turnover in staff in both offices, there has been a lot of inconsistencies and different practices being done. And I know that Jim Goss has asked publicly, he has asked George Danos, the treasurer, and he has asked, basically the board to assist, but our hands are very much tied. I'll go ahead and leave the floor for any of the other two board members that are present to answer.
Thank you. Jim, you first, and then Steve.
Yeah, as you can see on my face, I'm furious. I'm tired of being lied to. I think it's very concerning that the person who is minding our financial books is lying to not only this board, but to our finance committee, to the county board. I mean, this has been multiple times that both publicly and privately he has been asked, when is it going to be done? When is it going to be done? And I personally have been lied to no less than 5 times in the last 5 months. And that goes back to, his inability to spend the amount of time that it takes to do the job, and B, the supervision. If he had an employee that wasn't getting the job done, as I've told him, the buck stops with him. And you can blame all you want to blame on a past employee, but you are the supervisor of that. And when he's lying to this board, to state and federal agencies in communications, he's made this board's financial people look bad because he made promises and assurances that we had no choice but to accept, to believe him. Now I'm at the point where I can't believe a word he says. So, Michael, I appreciate you coming on this morning and taking the time to inform us. I wish we'd have had you here in December when we had him. But again, this is, I don't see how this is going to be recoverable. And I hope we don't lose grant funding, but we're very fortunate. And this pains me to say this, we're very fortunate that coronavirus has slowed down so many of these offices. Otherwise, I fear we would have lost a great deal of funding as it is. So, I'm going to do as much as I can do, but I will make a phone call as soon as this meeting's over with our auditor, if he'll answer the phone, make sure that things are moving forward, that promises made will actually be followed through this time. I do know the new deputy auditor was on the call last night. He's young, he's green, but he seems capable. And I have not, obviously the offices have been closed for a while, so have not met this person face to face at all. But I'll keep pushing and do as much. But again, I've pushed as hard as I can push. And outside of actually doing his job for him, I don't know what else I could have done. But again, you have my apologies. That doesn't go very far because it doesn't matter. But I'm furious and trying to fix this.
Thank you, Jim. Steve?
Sure, thank you. In terms of characterizing Mr. Danos as lying, I look at the faces that I see on this screen, and I see a lot of people that are administrators. And I think most of you would agree that you are really about as good as your staff for the most part. I know that there was a conversation, I think within the last 6 to 7 weeks, when we came up with a new chief deputy auditor, that there was a conversation between George and between our external auditor, and information that George was not aware of was brought to his attention. And she was let go almost immediately thereafter. Mr. Goss is talking about whether or not George will answer his phone calls. I've never had any problem with George answering phone calls. Maybe that's an exception. I rather doubt it, though. He has been professional in his comportment in all contacts that I've had with him. I too will be in contact with Mr. Danos after this meeting to get additional information and to request particularly the remediation letter to the Department of Human Services that Betty spoke about. And I have confidence that he will have his staff take care of it or will do it personally. That's all.
Thank you, Steve. Anybody else? Mayor Finan?
I guess want to remind our board that we have a fiduciary duty with respect to RPC. And I realize that the bulk of what is happening is really out of our control. But from my perspective, I think it's important to be on the record, not only at a meeting like this, but also to the county board. We had sent a letter, oh gosh, right before everything shut down. So maybe our February meeting regarding this, urging, I think, that additional staff be hired and the audit be completed. My request would be that we send an additional letter outlining exactly what is happening from the RPC perspective, in the sense that here are the findings we have gotten from our funders that request, responses within 30 days, that it puts $37 million worth of grants in jeopardy, and outlining the type of services that are in jeopardy. And I'm happy to draft that letter. I realize in some respects this is political. I don't want to send a political letter. What I want to send is a very factual letter from us as a board, outlining why it is important and why we believe that this has to get done. I can send it on my own, but if any other board members want to join in, or if we want to ask staff to draft the letter for review and approval by the board, I don't know how we want to do it, but I feel like it's really important to get this on the record.
Delitso, would you be willing to draft your staff to draft that letter that Deb talked about? Deb can do it. I think maybe the staff can do it as well. And is there any objection from those members here to sending a letter designating the importance of getting it done? And if there's if there's anything that this board can do, whatever that letter looks like, is there a consensus? Or let me ask you this: is there anybody who would object to another letter being sent? Raise your hand if you do object. All right, seeing none, I'll have Dr. Sulamoyo, if you and your staff would send something out that is non-political, as you guys are non-political as well, and we would agree to that, and we could get that done within the week for sure, I suppose. Delitso, do you have any comments?
No, we'll work on a draft and get it out to the commissioners.
So, and I don't know with Open Meetings Act how we go about sort of approving the letter. I'll leave it to staff to figure that out. But from my perspective, I want my name, I want to be a signatory on the letter. I don't want it to be a letter just from staff, but I want to sign it as the mayor of Champaign.
Yeah,
I'm in agreement with that. I was sitting here thinking about that. And I think this is the time we need to show unity and strength. So I think I would recommend that all of the commissioners sign the letter.
Dennis, did you have any comments?
Right. It's one thing to send a letter, but it might be more effective if we also participated in our next meeting via Zoom to represent our needs face-to-face during a Zoom conference. And I think it'd be appropriate for maybe a representative of the board or maybe Mr. Delitso to be there and talk to them just as we're talking now, because letters are abstract and they don't necessarily have the same impact as face-to-face interactions.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree. I think it means more if there's if time in public comment, or actually time when we get back to the auditors section of the committee of the whole meeting. We could have that conversation in that section of the meeting. I'd be willing to put it on the agenda from the finance perspective there. So I think it means a whole lot more there. The letter's great, but again, I think the impact is in the public communication.
Okay, that's a great idea. Mayor Finan?
I'm wondering, I haven't been paying attention to how the county is handling their meetings. Are we able to get a link and participate? Do we need to request a special ability to do so because we're on the RPC board? What's the best way to have public participation at your meeting?
No, you would have.
Oh, Jim.
Yeah, you would have access. We don't really restrict the access for people that are on the agenda. We ask, the way we've done it, Deb, and it's still evolving, so take this with a grain of salt, but we've asked that people that speak in public participation get off of the call after that portion of the meeting. So, we've all now done a lot of Zooms. The bigger those crowds are, it's hard to manage that, but folks that are going to speak at any point on the agenda are requested to stay on the call. So it's easy to manage. So yeah, you wouldn't have to even request anything. We would make sure that you were there. So
before I let Steve talk, I did for the first time monitor the county board meeting last night, and the stuff that they put up on the screen, it was very blurry. Maybe it was mine, and it's really hard. And also there's pictures of people that are not board members, so it's really hard to follow. But regardless, if we have one representative or how that would work. I wouldn't want it to be Jim or Steve or even Geraldo. It'd be somebody else that represents, whether it was me as a chair or Delizzo or whomever. So Steve, what comment do you have?
I think it would be most appropriate if it was an agenda item for public comment. There's really no chance for any kind of a dialogue. And I think as an agenda item and as a person that could then be included in the meeting proper, that would be more appropriate. Jim, what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, Steve. I think that's exactly the way it should be, as an agenda item down in the auditor section of the committee of the whole meeting.
Thank you, Steve.
On the agenda for the next meeting, it should not be a problem. And I would have to concur with what Jim had indicated, that it is very frustrating. We've been asking for these records now since September of last year, and we've been getting the same runaround. So we are very frustrated, and we have been trying, but you can't get blood out of a turnip. And I would like to go ahead and sign that letter as well, too.
All right.
But I'll definitely will get it on the agenda.
Thank you. Anybody, raise your hand if anybody else has any comments. Thank you, county board members. Anybody else? All right. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. We'll see you maybe next time.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, everyone. If any questions come up in the interim, as I've told to the management, just, we're always available. So just let us know.
Thank you so much. All right, moving on. Is there any other additional audience participation? Hearing none, let's move on. The minutes of the RPC draft meeting of April 24th, 2020. Is there a motion to approve the draft meeting minutes for April 24th?
So moved. I'll second that. Dennis Roberts.
Any discussion, any corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 And opposed? Motion carries. All right, next we have the consolidated financial reports, April 30th, 2020. And Betty, you want to discuss the report before we make a motion, I guess?
Sure. So our fund balance is just slightly shy of $10 million. It's down a bit because our receivables are quite significant this past month at just over $1.4 million. A lot of that is due to very delays at state reimbursement because of the COVID shutdown, but it's also due to delays in the treasurer's office actually posting receipts. So one of the experiences that we've had is that we get funding in, we get federal wire transfers within 24 hours, but they're not being posted to the accounting records. And so there's the financial status of where we are will be slightly skewed because those receipts are not being posted in a timely manner. But everything else is healthy and to be expected in this environment.
What is the time frame, Betty, to which it isn't timely? How long has that not been timely?
It's not been timely for a long time, probably at least 6-8 months. And so it's just an issue of we know the money is here because we get notification from our grant funding agencies, but then it's not posted on the accounting record. So that poses a challenge for us because we can't understand our current status at any given time.
Right.
All right, thank you. All right, did I ask for a motion already? I can't remember.
So
Is there a
moved.
There's
motion?
a question.
Question?
So I moved to.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought there was a question. Yes, Jim, is that you?
Yes, Jim Goss.
All right, and second by?
It'll be me, Dennis Roberts.
Thank you, Dennis. Any other discussion or comments?
Yeah, it's Jim again. Betty, is that to be posted by the treasurer's office or is that posted by the auditor's office?
Well, it has to first be posted by the treasurer's office. They have to put that in, and then that is moved over to the auditor's office because then they have to enter that into the accounting record. So, there's a disconnect there.
That was my assumption, but I wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? All right, seeing none, let's move on to the list of bills. Betty.
Sure. So the volume of bill processing is typical, which, given the fact that we're in shutdown is a little surprising. But I think the good news here is because it's a typical volume, that means we're serving a lot of the clients and the public. And I think the staff has done a really great creative job of doing workarounds, creating online methods of communicating with clients. So much of this represents a large volume of direct client assistance, and we're happy that we're able to provide this during this shutdown. All the charges are appropriate, and there's nothing unusual to report.
All right, is there a motion to accept and place on file the list of bills for April 2020?
So moved, Rosales.
Second?
Second.
Tammy, was it? Oh, okay. Any discussion, questions? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, moving on. Motion passes, by the way. Action item F, fiscal year 20 budget amendment, the layoff aversion. Betty, would you discuss that before we make a motion?
Sure. So this is a new department to be added to our current budget. This represents a new layoff aversion project. The state recently issued statewide rapid response funding in the amount of $5 million statewide to support small businesses that have been negatively impacted by the COVID-19 shutdown. These funds are used to mitigate layoffs, to promote social distancing, and follow all of the provisions established by the federal and state governments related to this national health emergency. The funding ranges for these COVID-19 layoff grant funds, and these are grant funds, not loan funds to small businesses, range from $5,000 to $50,000. And those were made available Businesses had to document the use of those COVID emergency funds. Our staff internally had to process those applications and submit them to the Illinois Department of Commerce. Some examples of layoff aversion projects that we submitted, including funding for cleaning and sanitation services, purchases of computer hardware and software, purchase of call center or remote work environment supplies, production of essential goods and services during the shutdown, and offset some of the costs of wages and benefits during the shelter in place. All of the funded projects need to produce measurable outcomes, which includes the number of jobs saved, the amount of annual wages saved, and other relevant project-specific results. So the RPC worked very hard. We had a 2-week turnaround on these applications. It was a first come, first served basis with the State Department of Commerce. We had over 100 inquiries in our region. We submitted formal applications on behalf of 20 small businesses. Those projects ranged anywhere from $6,300 to $50,000, and just slightly over $400,000. We are still waiting for the Department of Commerce to send us the list of approvals. Again, this was very competitive, but I think we were able to respond and accelerate processing the applications for businesses. Because there's so much interest in our local area and this type of funding, and every small business is suffering under the shutdown, we anticipate there may be a second round of funding, and we'll certainly keep our eye on that. So this will allow us to accommodate grant funding to support these businesses and reimburse them for these expenses. So I ask your approval for this added budget.
Thank you, Betty. Do I hear a motion to approve the fiscal year 20 budget amendment layoff version as presented?
Yeah, I'd like to make that motion. It's a great project and we certainly should support it.
All right, by Dennis, and second?
Second.
By Deb. Any discussion, comments?
Yeah, it's Jim. Last night when we approved this at the county board meeting, there was a question from from Ms. Fortato. Is this for businesses outside of Champaign, Urbana, Rantoul, or is it for really anybody that is in Champaign County?
It was in the 5-county local workforce area. So Champaign,
okay,
Ford,
so it does include
Iroquois, Piatt, and Douglas counties. Yeah, that's our workforce area. And so anyone in those 5 counties could be eligible, yes.
Okay, I will get back. I told the board I would get back with a response to that. So thank you.
All right, anybody else? Anybody else? All right, seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much. All right, next, fiscal year 20 budget amendment, permanent supportive housing. And again, I'll look to Betty.
Sure. So this is a new department. Again, the Champaign County Continuum of Service Providers to the Homeless annually submits an application to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for funds to address shelter and housing needs of homeless individuals in our community. The Regional Planning Commission was awarded $205,000 for this effort to administer a new permanent supportive housing program. And this is for homeless individuals with disabilities. Our program funding will support rent subsidies for at least 14 one-bedroom apartments, program administration, and staff to provide comprehensive case management. So our participants have a real shot at maintaining stable and permanent housing. So our staff has to be intensively involved in this initiative because they need to do eligibility screening. They need to provide housing subsidy assistance, rent calculations, voucher issuance, and also landlord eligibility. But we're pleased to provide this to address at least some portion of the housing insecurity for those individuals in our community. So we appreciate your approval of this add to the budget.
Thank you, Betty. To get it on the table, is there a motion to approve the fiscal year 20 budget amendment, permanent supportive housing as presented?
So moved. Diane.
Second.
Diane?
Second, Katina.
Okay. Any discussion, questions, comments? Raise your hand.
That's great.
Anybody would like to comment? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Next, Head Start, Early Head Start. Is Brandy on the line?
I am. Good morning.
Hi,
Morning.
Brandy.
In your packet is the March management report, and I want to share those highlights with you. On March 12th, our Early Childhood Division was awarded the Illinois Head Start Association's Vanessa Rich Innovation and Leadership Program Award. Our program was chosen by the Illinois Head Start Association's board because of our persistence and creativity to recruit and maintain early childhood staff. This is a award that is presented annually at the Spring Illinois Head Start Association Conference. So we are very honored for that to be presented with that award. The COVID-19 pandemic presented many challenges, which we systematically addressed by adapting our program and services to the reality of social distancing. Since closing in March, we responded by offering 4 food distribution events, which served 35,625 meals to children 18 years and younger. Those events will continue throughout the summer. We also provided diapers, baby wipes, formula, books, community resources, and educational packets and supplies to support children and families in their time of need. We also created the Facebook page, RPC Early Childhood Education, which now has 374 members consisting of parents, employees, and community members. This Facebook page also reaches the Illinois Head Start Association, government officials locally, state, and federal, as well as our regional office and National Head Start Association. So it's getting widely viewed. This Facebook page offers social emotional support, virtual lessons, and community resources and announcements for our families. Fortunately, we are able to pay our employees their normal wages and benefits through the support of the Office of Head Start, Illinois State Board of Education, and Child Care Assistance Program. Many of our employees are working remotely and will continue to do so until we are able to reopen. The Early Childhood Division continues to work on ensuring compliance with ongoing grants while continuing to seek new sources of revenue in preparation for reopening. In April, I submitted a grant application to the Illinois State Board of Education for expanding infant toddler enrollment and services for our county. The total amount requested was $1,669,396. I'm hopeful awards will be announced in June. That concludes my highlights for the Early Childhood Division, and I'm open to questions.
All right, to get it on the table, do I have a motion to accept and place on file Head Start, Early Head Start management reports, including financials and service area reports dated May 5th, 2020. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Katina.
Katina, second?
Second, Tammy.
Second, Tammy. Any discussions, comments, questions for Brandy?
No, I just want to say that I say this all the time, but well done, and the services that you guys continue to come up with and provide make a huge impact in our community. So thank you for continuing to operate with intentionality.
Thank you, Katina.
Absolutely.
Who else would like to speak on that? Anyone? All right, seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. All right. The program division updates. Betty, you're up first.
Sure. So as mentioned earlier, all of our divisions are working on a number of new one-time and permanent grant applications. So we're all involved in helping each other on that. So that seems to keep all of us busy during this remote shutdown. So we're looking at a lot of new funding opportunities to serve our community. We've implemented a number of new technology enhancements. As I mentioned last time, We've developed a workforce online application for job seekers and one for business assessments. We've just created, and I'd like to present this to you. I'm pretty proud of how this looks. It's our new flyer called From Layoff to Liftoff. This is for our 5-county workforce area. This is to advise folks that have been laid off or lost their job or wages due to the COVID-19 that they can pursue training right now and not lose their unemployment benefits. We can provide up to $16,100 to get them back in training, get certifications at a number of institutions locally. And so we're going to distribute this flyer in all types of print and online media. It also has a direct link to the new state of Illinois called Get Hired Illinois that has a robust data portal showing where there are businesses that are hiring. I know we have a hiring in Rantoul at Vista Outdoors. I believe they have 54 to 84 job openings. We're going to do potentially a drive-by job fair in Rantoul to address that need. But anyway, this gets the message out that while people are on unemployment, and if they're getting the extra $600 a month due to the COVID, which may expire at the end of July, we anticipate having at least 30,000 clients trying to access our Mattis location. Those are folks that are seeking additional unemployment, but also we want to be prepared to serve them and help them get certification, get them back in the job market. And so this is just a way for us to begin that process now and accelerate this. So we're hopeful that we can get this message out to all of those that have either lost their job or been laid off and are interested in pursuing some career development. So that's been a big issue with workforce. The other announcement is that we received from the Department of Commerce our funding allocation for workforce development for program year 20, which starts July 1. We are receiving an allocation of $3,302,551. That represents a $1.2 million increase, and I'm sure we're going to need every bit of that to serve job seekers in this 5-county region. But we're very delighted to have received this huge increase in our formula funding. We continue to negotiate our Head Start contract with AFSCME, having the most recent session last evening. And so that continues. That is likely to take, several months. So that's all I have this morning.
Excuse me. Does anybody have questions or comments for Betty regarding this? Nice flyer. Mm-hmm. All right, hearing none. Moving on to Betty Kruger.
Good morning, everyone. The human resources reports included in your packet today represent personnel transactions from April 15th through May 11th. During the reporting period, our management team hired 4 new employees. RPC has a current employee count of 325 and 74 work experience employees for a total of 399 employees on the payroll. While balancing the uncertainties related to COVID-19, the management team is working to strategically fill 17 open positions. We also currently have 12 candidates in the pre-employment stage of the hiring process. Our team has been working diligently to continue to source candidates for all open positions and are working with department directors to develop strategic staffing plans to ensure we are appropriately staffed for the unprecedented circumstances presented by the COVID-19 pandemic. No easy task. Additionally, the RPC management team has been working on a comprehensive plan to prepare to transition employees back to work. We are assessing several resources, including many options offered by collaborating with community partners to ensure employees have a safe environment with the appropriate PPEs. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Becky? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Becky. Lisa Benson, Community Service Director.
Good morning. Hello. As we've been talking about, we are continuing to do the services that we do in community services and actually expanding a great deal of our services. Right now, we're leading a collaboration in the community to assist approximately 60 households to move from emergency shelter to permanent housing. Betty talked about some of the permanent housing that will be receiving additional funds to support. So we're working specifically with emergency shelters and those that are housing individuals in hotels in the community to try to route them to permanent supportive housing. The Housing Authority has also made available some opportunities for individuals to be prioritized for housing vouchers through the Housing Authority. So we're collaborating with individuals in the community to try to get people routed to those opportunities. RPC, I think a lot of us talked about today, we are really a force in the community and what we're doing for individuals throughout Champaign County and some collaring counties across really 15 counties in Illinois. So the services that we provide and the ability to continue to receive those funds are so important. We're called upon across right now during this COVID pandemic by, City of Champaign reached out and said, can you help us with a housing inspection? So we're continuing to do things in the community. We've expanded our emergency shelter for families with Illinois Department of Human Services funds to provide 3 additional hotel vouchers. So even though the emergency shelter for families is at capacity, we're continuing to expand and support individuals in hotel stays and case manage them and move them through the continuum of services. So I'm just stressing that to say, those funds that are at risk impact so many individuals in the community. We are launching the COVID specific relief program with Community Services Block Grant. We anticipate to be able to serve at least 500 households with rent assistance, mortgage assistance, utility, both water and power bill assistance, and food assistance. With those funds, we will also input additional staff to support some of the efforts that I've talked about, and hope to partner also with the City of Champaign, City of Urbana, and the county through the Home Consortium to provide some longer-term tenant-based rent assistance programming. With that, we hired actually in this month and next month, we'll be hiring 3 to 4 new staff. So we're bringing on new staff to continue to be able to impact the work that we're doing in the community. We received $60,000 to input into rent assistance right now through June 30th. Based on the need right now that is actually not even COVID specific, we're seeing an increased need for rent assistance for those that are just experiencing hardships in general that may or may not be COVID specific. So we anticipate being able to distribute $60,000 from now until June 30th. So I think that highlights some of the need and the impact that we're having in the community. Those are just some of the highlights that I want to share with you today.
Thank you, Lisa. Are there any questions or comments for Lisa? All right, seeing none. Rita.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to share my screen now that I can go through my report. First, the census. We have been working continuously on the census, and I have an update for you based on the latest update from the census as Wednesday, May 20th. This is the latest of the response rate. Our concern, the group working on the census, are mainly the village of Rantoul and the city of Champaign because the numbers are still low and they are below the United States response. Even though these numbers increased from last month, they are still down. San Joseph is on the lead at 81%. And then Mahomet, and I know that they have a friendly competition going on there with Sabo. And these are, in general, the numbers that we have. We are, the good news that we have is that we are in the 1,000 top counties in the whole United States with the highest response rate, but we need to keep pushing. We know that particularly for the city of Champaign, there are concerns about the response from the university district, from the students, and I'm going to go to the details of that. These are the areas with the lowest response rates in our county. I didn't include Rantoul because Rantoul is the same area as I mentioned it last time, is the area of where the base used to be located. And in Champaign and Urbana, the areas are the same as last time. And based knowing that we contacted the university, we have been working with the universities on ways to increase the response rate. They have sent mass mailing, they have sent a lot of information to the students. They created a website, but still we are down there. I created map for you that show the maps show the response rate by census tracts. Then you can see the areas specifically where we have a lowest response rate. And we have been communicating with staff at the cities to address the low rates of response on those areas. We are doing our best. We know that part of the problem, particularly in the University District and in North Lincoln Avenue, is the low response rates from the students. And the university is aware, and we are trying to reach out to the students to the best way possible to increase their response rates. From the last meeting, we had requests from the village of Rantoul and the village of Savoy to have yard signs. We gave yard signs to both communities, and we have been working closely with both communities to increase the response rates for the census. But this is where we are at this time. Any questions regarding the census?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Rita, I know the university has, and we've talked about this on multiple phone calls, has the ability to report students who are report to the census that of the students who are living in dorms. And that tract in Urbana, of course, is where all the Urbana dormitories, I should say residence halls, they're not dormitories anymore. So do you know if this 41% response rate includes the numbers reported directly from the university to the Census Bureau?
The university hasn't reported that information yet to the census.
Has or has not?
Has not.
Okay, so this will make a huge difference when they actually do that report.
Yes, the university is trying to increase the number of responses that they can provide, because there are some resident halls or housing units where they cannot report the information that they have due to some limitations. Then they are working out that to see if there is a possibility for them to be able to provide that information directly to the census instead of the census waiting for the students to complete the forms. Then that's why they haven't reported that information yet.
Okay, because just in the residence halls are thousands and thousands of students. So
yeah,
that'll make a huge difference if they just go ahead and provide that information.
Exactly. But one area of concern for us is those apartment buildings where the university has no information and the students are not responding, like on North Lincoln Avenue, like along Springfield Avenue. There are a lot of apartment buildings that, as you can see from the response rate, the students haven't completed the census form. Then that's where we need to put our efforts.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, other questions or comments for Rita?
I have
Dennis.
Right. So Rita, I don't know if I've heard whether the data for collecting the census has been extended. What is our deadline now? Is it into the fall?
Yes, the data collection process has been extended up to this fall. By the end of December, the census was supposed to provide all the data to the president. That was extended until spring of next year. Then we have more time now to continue with this process. The problem that we are facing, we, RPC, and the agencies working on the census, is that we apply and receive a grant from the Illinois Department of Human Services to do education and outreach for the census. The grant expired on June 30th. And they are not extending that grant in order for us to continue funding this project. We'll have to reapply. And the main agency that applied for this funding was Public Health. And with the COVID problem that they are having, I don't think they are going to reapply, which means that all the sub-recipients of the grants will not be able to continue with this work, with the funding that was provided, and will be returning back to the state a significant amount of funding.
That's kind of criminal, isn't it? It's just terrible. That's a very
Yeah.
bad decision. And I would hope that, I don't know if it's like, which legislation would be required to make a change in that.
Yeah,
But it
that's
would certainly seem likely that that would be an important issue for a lot of people.
yeah. And part of the problem was with the COVID. We were not able to do all the outreach activities that we had planned.
Sure, right.
That's why we were not able to spend down all the money that was allocated to us.
This started at the least possibly positive time for the census, because I mean, it just throws everything off here in our community.
Yeah.
Okay.
And even with that, we have done great, I would say, regarding the response rate.
Yeah, considering for sure. All right, other questions regarding the census? I think you have other things, Rita, but anything about the census from others? All right, Rita.
Okay. Update on the small businesses grants. I'm going to go through this really quickly because Betty already talked about it. We work, as she mentioned, with almost 100 agencies, over 90 agencies, businesses in the 5-county area. From those contacts that we have with all those agencies and businesses, we were able to submit 20 applications by May 11th. And at that time, we stopped sending applications because DCO contacted us and told us that they had already reached the amount of applications and funding that they had available. And we even had to turn down some of the applications that were completed. We couldn't submit. The total amount request, and that's why Betty requested the budget amendment, it was over $400,000, but we haven't received a confirmation of which of the grants submitted have been approved. But there is a lot of need out there from all the contacts that we have with so many businesses and agencies on the 5-county area. We are also working on the downstate small business stabilization grants. These grants make funds available for 60 days of working capital up to $25,000. This grant in particular is overwhelming, the amount of documentation and requirements attached to this grant. Not many businesses have been willing to apply for this kind of funding. We started working with 3 businesses. In the middle of the process, one of the businesses wasn't able to comply with the requirements and didn't continue working with us. Then at this time, we are working with 2 businesses in Champaign County that are interested in applying for this kind of funding. But it's taking us a lot of time and effort to be able to complete the application, and we haven't submitted any application yet. Then the state of Illinois, DCO, released a call for projects for the Rebuild Illinois grant. That's the capital grant from the governor. At this time, we are working with several agencies on applying for this funding. We are working, the release was for several types of grants. In terms of the public infrastructure, there are 2 types, the fast track and the regular track. The fast track has an allocation of $25 million. The grant ceiling is $5 million, and they will approve them, the applications in the way that they are submitted. The last date for submission is June 15. For that kind of grant, we are working with the city of Urbana and the city of Hoopeston. For the regular Illinois, Rebuild Illinois public infrastructure, there is more money available, $50 million. The grant ceiling is the same, $5 million, and this is due 2 weeks after the fast track. We are working with the village of Tolono at this time and in conversation with the village of Bismarck. And we are also in conversations with the city of Monticello because they are applying for the funding themselves, but they are looking for an agency who can administer the grant if they receive the funding. And they have reached out to us to work with us on doing the administration of that grant. That's the Rebuild Illinois grants. And now I'm moving into C-cards. This is the status of the current service for C-card. We have had a 33% increase in fixed route usage and 65% decrease in demand response. This is comparing the same weeks from last year to this year. We are just looking at the impact of COVID in transit. Then I have graphics for you showing that information. As you can see here, the first one is the fixed route ridership. That's the ridership that we have going on in Rantoul, the 3 routes that we have in Rantoul, and the route that we have between Rantoul and Champaign-Urbana and back to Rantoul. As you can see here, between March and end of April, we have a significant increase in ridership. I also want to let you know that at that time, we stopped charging riders the fee that they have to pay, the fares for transit. And that has had at that time a significant impact. You can see here the increase on ridership at that time, which is great. But as soon as the COVID cases started showing up in Rantoul, you can see that there was a significant reduction on using transit. That's a concern for us because once we go back to normal, if we can say that, we have concerns about the ridership levels that we'll have because people will still be scared of taking transit. Regarding demand response, this is kind of, just to be clear, this is kind of a taxi service that we implement with this transit service that we provide. We see that there was a significant decrease on ridership during the weeks from early March to May. And the main reason for that is that the people who use this service are people who are at high risk in terms of illnesses, disabled people, and we know that this is the main reason why people are not using transit for this kind of service. And the last graphic just shows the total ridership when we combine both of them. And as you can see, in 2020, we have had a decrease in ridership total for C-cards. Then based on that, we received an allocation of funding for the CARES grant through FDA. The funding allocation was $579,000. No local match. We prepare a grant application to use the whole funding. And the funding is basically to pay for salaries and wages, materials and supplies that we are using to keep the buses clean and to help to keep the staff safe during the COVID. The other grant that we applied for, the Rebuild Illinois Capital Grant, also have funding for transit. We requested $105,000, no local match with that funding application to purchase bus cameras for the 13 buses that we have. C-cards has. The cameras will be for inside and outside the buses to increase safety and for liability purposes. And we are also requesting one more 14-passenger bus for C-cards. Then, as you can see, we have been busy preparing grant applications. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
All right, questions for Rita. Yes, Diane.
Just have a quick comment. I wanted to thank Rita and her team for helping Urbana prepare the grant application for the rapid response, whatever that is. it's a project on Rice Street that we wouldn't have been able to fund, and I just appreciate this quick turnaround. And that's one of the beauties of RPC is the grant writing ability, and it just supplements, you know, our staff, and it allows us to respond to these opportunities really rapidly. So thank you.
You are welcome.
Indeed.
Please do it.
Anybody else? Raise your hand. All right. So I need a motion to accept and place on file the division updates for fiscal human resources, community services, and planning and community development. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Goss.
Goss, second.
Summers, second.
Summers, thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, will all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Right, next, the CEO Management Report presented orally for discussion by Dr. Silamoyo.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the commissioners. Let me begin by, first of all, thanking you as our governing body for always being very supportive of the work that we're doing at the RPC, particularly at this very difficult time. And so I just wanted to express that appreciation on behalf of our team. I think the advocacy that you do on our behalf, as exemplified in this morning's meeting, is greatly appreciated. Secondly, I'd like to also extend, again, my continued appreciation to our team. As you heard from all the various reports that have been given, all of our divisions, it's pretty much hands on deck, providing services and relief to the communities through various programs and services that the RPC has been fortunate to receive. And so you will be seeing here in the next few days too, some TV commercials, essentially advertising the resources that will be available to the public for those that are in need as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The second thing that I want to highlight is that I'm very happy that a piece of legislation that I was involved in drafting before the COVID-19 pandemic hit is moving right along the General Assembly as they convened this week, and will be hopefully passed as part of the budget resolution that the General Assembly is working on. That legislation involves amending the Illinois Energy Assistance Act to actually allow to increase the income eligibility for households to access the energy assistance funds. Currently, the funding that we have, which is funded through the surcharge that our regulated utilities assess on their customers, we're able to serve households up to 150% of poverty, which means if it's a household of four, they're making about $39,000 a year. But with this legislation, we're increasing it up to 200% of poverty, which will allow us to serve a household of four making about $52,000 a year. So that's going to help us reach out to more households that will be have been impacted by this pandemic. Not to add to that, I think there are also some additional funds that are coming from the federal government with the CARES Act that was initially passed. There was about $900 million nationally made available for the energy assistance program. There are, as you've probably all been following, there's been an additional, I think, a fourth supplemental that Congress has been working on. It's sort of stuck, I think, in the Senate. But nonetheless, with that piece of legislation, which they're calling the HEROES Act, there are additional funds that are being considered in there. For LAHEAP, we're looking at about $1.5 billion additional energy assistance funds, which is roughly about half of what normally is appropriated for that program on an annual basis. And so we at the RPC are anticipating seeing a lot more individuals coming or seeking assistance with their utilities. Right now, because the utilities have a shut-off moratorium that mirrors the governor's stay-at-home order, we anticipate that once that is lifted and people begin to get shut off from the utilities, we're going to see a huge influx of individuals coming to our offices for assistance. And I think that will also coincide with the unemployment running out, I believe, sometime in July. So to that end, we've been in discussions. We had our first meeting yesterday with all the department heads at Brookings to begin to discuss logistics on how we would manage if indeed Brookings will be open to the public in the future, how we would handle the traffic, not just RPC, but there are other offices that are anticipating, huge traffic coming into Brookings. And so we're working through all of that. There may be possibilities or opportunities for us to look at additional space so that we can accommodate the crowd. The last thing that I want to highlight, there's a memo that was included in your packet, and that has to do with the Martin Center. We have, I think, provided reports to the commission, and as far back as November, we had a special study session that involved the Park District on this project, which we are very excited to have been working with the Park District on this. And just to recap, as a result of us needing to move out of our current space on Neal Street, which is space that we are co-located with Unit 4, we had started to look at some space in the community for us to move those classrooms. There are about 5 classrooms there. And when this opportunity with the Martin Center came up, we started having discussions with the Park District of the possibility of building some classrooms in that facility. And part of what attracted us to the Martin Center is the opportunity for our families and our children to access the amenities that are being planned as a result of that development. So over the last few months, we have been meeting with the Park District. We've been meeting with the architects that have been retained for purposes of designing the Martin Center to be able to provide to them what our needs are for that space, and working through how RPC's Early Childhood Education Center, which will have 6 classrooms, including offices for staff, the Boys and Girls Club that will be in that facility, as well as the Park District, how we could all coexist in that space. And so we're at a juncture now that they've been able to get the cost estimates for what it would cost to actually construct this building. But at this juncture, what we wanted to bring to the commission is that given the COVID-19 pandemic and the fact that since the governor had issued the stay-at-home order as far back as March, we obviously did shut off all of our center-based programming. In other words, we were not having children in our classrooms. And as Brandy reported under her report, we've been providing services remotely, delivering food, and trying to support the families the best way we can in order to minimize, of course, the spread of the pandemic to our children, but also to our staff and to our families. But I think we feel that absent a vaccine or a cure, we don't anticipate that if we do go back to providing center-based programming, that it would be the same way it was a few months ago. I think that in our planning discussions, we anticipate that if we are to go back, we would obviously have less children in the classrooms. Right now, I think we average about 18 children in the classroom with 3 adults. But in this COVID environment, we would probably be looking at 8 children and 2 adults, which means that the rest of the children would be receiving services in other ways than being in a center-based sort of setting. So with that said, I think we feel that it wouldn't be prudent for us at this time. We're not saying that we're not wanting to be or not interested in being part of the Martin Center development. We just don't feel that there's so many unknowns for us to commit $3 million almost in a new construction project without knowing how we're going to operate our programs. One of the other issues that is probably tied financially to that commitment is that in some of the classrooms that we offer, I think it's full day programming, and Brandy, if I'm off topic, feel free to jump in. But with some of the classrooms where we're offering full day programming to our families, particularly the families that are either working or going to school, we're able to generate revenue from those classrooms. And we feel that if we are going to be in a more constricted type of a setting, the revenue that we would anticipate would actually assist us in paying on the lease payments that we would enter into with the park district once this building is constructed would be minimal. So at this point, we're looking at, if we go back and it's in a much more restricted or constricted basis, it could have an impact on some of the other facilities that we have. The newer one we just purchased through the Illinois Ventures for Community Action in West Champaign, and then we have the one here in Urbana. So we want to be more planful, if you will, before we can actually come back to you to say, okay, we're ready to make this commitment right now, knowing how we would operate as a program. But there's so many unknowns, and as your CEO, I just don't feel that it would be, the timing is not right for us to make that commitment. So with that said, I don't know, Brandy or Betty, if I've left anything out, but I would entertain any questions that you might have related to this project.
All right, questions for Delitzo? Yes, Dennis.
Yeah.
Yes, Dennis.
So Delitzo, so if the RPC is not securing a spot in the building for the near future, and I guess we'd be imagining we'd be operating there for years in the future if this was going to be functional, are we going to lose the opportunity to have the rooms? Are they going to be assigned to other people for other purposes, do you think?
So we haven't had the discussion with the park district in terms of our thinking at this point. We wanted to bring it to you first, and then my plan is to reach out to the park district next week. But to your question, the way this was designed, the 6 classrooms, those would have been paid for by the Regional Planning Commission through a loan to the park district in the amount of, I think it's like $2.7 million over a 20 to 25 year amortization period. So I would imagine, and I think the conversation we need to have with the park district is, I'm sure that their timeline, has to have been also affected by this COVID-19 pandemic. Right. So I would hope that there would be at least an allowance of time for us to get a better understanding of how we're going to operate as a program in the event there's no immediate vaccine or cure here in the next few months.
Are they delaying their plans for construction based on this reality?
Not to my knowledge. We were provided the cost estimates about a week or so ago, and I think they were probably anticipating that we would be bringing to you for approval for us to commit the almost $3 million right now for their project to move forward. But I think that the issues we're presenting to you, that we're going to be presenting to them, are real issues for us. And Brandy, I'd like for you to jump in terms of some of the unknowns that we have. I mean, we may be looking at a different program design here, where facilities may no longer be the driving factor for how we provide services to our children and families. I could be wrong, but we're in an unprecedented, environment right now. So, Brandy?
Yes, Delitzo is very accurate. I think that over the next several months, we are going to see a different way of serving children in early childhood and childcare environments. I think it's going to be really important for us to receive information, guidance from the Office of Head Start, DCFS, and also Illinois State Board of Education. I think there's still a lot of unknowns at this point, and as Delitza said, we are in uncharted territory. This is something very different, and we are expecting changes to come. And at this point, we've been given minimal guidance, and we're not even in the phase right now to open even partially to kids. So I think this is something that we need to wait for more information. And Delitza's right. Once we get back and as they start phasing these programs to open, the number of children allowed in a classroom will be lower, along with the number of total people in a facility. So, you know, how long that will last, again, like Delitza said, it could last a while until we have a vaccine. And therefore, we predict that with preliminary projections, it would be 50% less reimbursement received from the Child Care Assistance Program.
Yeah,
So,
and if I may also add to that, one other, and this is all sort of scenario thinking we've been going through as we've been looking, not just at this project, but just how the overall program. If we get to a point where, you know, I think most of our families we know prefer to have their children placed in a center-based program. And so if we are going to be limited in as far as how many children can be accommodated in incentive-based programming, we could potentially maybe even lose some of those children to other providers in the community, which could potentially have an impact on what we have in terms of enrollment. I don't know if that's how it will play out, but that's a potential as well.
well, and I would also say that all programs in the state of Illinois would be in the same predicament. So they will have to reinforce the same guidelines as the state and also CDC and so forth. So you know, we might be all in the same boat.
Yeah.
All right, any questions for Delitza or Brandy? Comments? All right, seeing none, thank you so much, Dr. Sulamoyo.
Thank you.
Is there any old business? Hearing none, is there any new business? Hearing none. With that, if there's no old or new, have a great day, and I declare
You know
us
what?
adjourned.
I'm
Yes.
sorry. I'm so sorry to interrupt. I had a real quick question for Lisa relative to the additional resources that she mentioned earlier, such as rental assistance, just kind of those hardship resources like utility assistance. For those resources, do people still go through centralized intake, or is there another access point when you don't need emergency housing, but rather just some of those hardship type resources?
So right now, probably the, excuse me, the best route right now, there's a press release that actually went out last night.
Okay.
And the best place to go right now is www.helpillinoisfamilies.com. And there's a route that they can express what type of assistance they need. And then that comes to us and we begin the application process with them. There's going to be a number of commercials, the Lizzo reference, and there's going to be commercials coming out with that same information too.
Okay, so they go together. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, any other final comments? All right, seeing none, I will declare us adjourned. Have a great day, everyone.